All right, and here we go. Greetings and welcome to the February 18th, 2020 special edition of International ACAC's Webinar Wednesday series, a member forum on the COVID-19 novel coronavirus. My name is Eric Hyde, and I'll be your webinar moderator for the next hour. We want to thank you all for joining us to discuss COVID-19 and the multitude of considerations connected with it. We'd also like to take this time to thank International ACAC for putting together this forum so quickly and for giving all of us and the members a chance for this dialogue. I'd also like to thank International ACAC for opening this discussion to NACAC members, many of whom are joining us today. This is a great reminder that COVID-19 is a global concern that impacts all of us, but together we'll persevere. So we're very fortunate to have an outstanding group of panelists and guests who will introduce themselves in just a moment. But before they do, we want to go through a couple notes about the session. So first, we want to just familiarize you with the Zoom platform a little bit. So what you can see there is the toolbar that you should see on your screen. You have three choices: chat, raise hand, and Q&A. For today's forum, we are primarily going to use the Q&A tool. So if you click on that Q&A tool, a pop-up box will appear, and you can type your questions right into that box. We will be able to see those questions, and we're going to collect them and present them to the panelists and guests at the end of the webinar. So please note that when you're typing a question in, you can ask the question with your name attached, or if you're more comfortable, you can ask that question anonymously by checking the box for anonymous question. The second tool you're going to see is the raise hand tool. We may use this tool for informal polling today, but most likely we will not be using it. And then the last tool is the chat. That's a messaging tool. Please note that we're not going to be monitoring the chat for questions. All of your questions should be put into Q&A. Okay, so again, for the most part, stick to Q&A and you'll be good. All right. Just another note is that this session will be recorded, is being recorded, and will later be archived on the International ACAC website. The session probably will move pretty quickly, so if you need to listen to anything again, or if you need to hear an answer again, please remember that the recording will be there for your reference. Okay, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to our panelists and guests for introductions.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Michelle Chow Liu, and I am a high school counselor and head of high school counseling at Western Academy of Beijing. I also moonlight as the Vice President for Membership, International ACAC.
Again, my name is Eric Hyde, your moderator for today. I'm currently the chair of NACAC's Global Engagement Committee and the University Connection Counseling Specialist at the English Language Programs of the University of Pennsylvania, and a member of the International ACAC Communication Committee. Hang on, Charlie, your microphone's muted. There we go.
I'm Charlie Pybus. I'm head of international student recruitment at the University of Bristol here in the UK. I'm also a delegate on the executive board for International ACAC. And in my previous life, I spent a lot of time traveling in the region, so know China pretty well.
And I'm Kathleen Schultz. I'm President-elect of International ACAC and also the Director of University Counseling at Dulwich College Shanghai in Pudong.
Hello, I'm Ning, Director of College Counseling from Vanke Meisha Academy, Shenzhen, China.
Hi, good morning from Montreal. My name is Jennifer Peterman, and I'm the Senior Manager of Undergraduate Recruitment at McGill University, and I oversee all of our recruitment efforts in Canadian high, US high, and overseas high schools. I'm also the chair of the Asia Committee for the Council of International Schools.
Hello everyone, my name is Jake. I'm the International Officer for East Asia from Imperial College London in the UK. So I oversee other student recruitment activities in mainland China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Macau, Japan, South Korea, pretty much the whole region that's being affected at the moment. So,
Great. Thank you, panelists and guests. We appreciate you coming on today. And now we want to find out a little bit more about the audience. So we're close to 200 attendees at this point. We want to find out a little bit about everyone. So I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll here. You'll be seeing the poll on your screen, and we would ask you to just check the box that most matches you. So who is in the audience? Your choices are secondary school, college, university, independent counselor or individual, organization, and of course, other. So we'll just give everyone another few seconds. Looks like everyone is very quick with their buttons this morning, or this evening, or maybe even afternoon. Okay, looks like we have just about everyone voted. So we'll go ahead and share those results. And you can see it looks like about half of the folks in attendance today are from the secondary school side. Then we've got the college and universities. We've got organizational members who are tuning in as well as independent counselors, and a handful of folks in the other category. Great, so thank you again for joining us today. The next question that we want to ask is to find out what region of the world are you joining us from today? So if you just take a minute, you can look through the list. Tried our best to be representative of all regions. So you can choose the region that is most representative of where you are currently. Great. Okay, got a couple more votes trickling in here. We'll just give it another few seconds. And perfect, we'll go ahead and share those results with you. So as you can see, right now the overwhelming group is from East Asia and the Pacific at 63%. But it looks like all but 3 regions are represented with us today. So thank you very much for answering those polls and for helping us know who's with us. And with that, I'll turn it over to Charlie.
Thanks, Eric. So the reason that we decided to put this session on was to kind of bring our membership, which is spread all over the globe, from schools, communities, universities, and to try and understand some of the impacts from the kind of the developing issue that we've got currently with the coronavirus, and how it's affecting people both on the ground and in terms of admissions practices. We know that we can't solve all of these issues or challenges on this webinar. It's really to provide a forum so that you can share, we can share our experiences and what our current thinking is and what we're looking to do in terms of supporting students, but also to help you understand that there's other people who are facing similar challenges, and there may be some ideas that you can pick up that will help you in your practice. So I hope that you find the session useful, and I'll hand back over to Eric.
Okay, so this is just data provided by Johns Hopkins Center for Systems Science and Engineering. And as of February 17th, 2020, almost 72,000 total cases, 70,500 of them in China. There's been 1,775 deaths total and 1,700 in China. There have been recoveries though. Those number of recoveries, 11,396. In terms of the deaths, the most dramatic impact are on the vulnerable populations with elderly and the young children. The second largest number of confirmed cases is in the Diamond Princess cruise ship. And so just to keep in mind that International ACAC and even NACAC is keeping abreast with the developments of the coronavirus and what's happening. There is a website on the very bottom of this link, and if you want to click on it to get more info. This is something that we're all kind of, I think, keeping an eye on every day and checking in to make sure the numbers and what's happening and how it's going to affect everyone else.
Great, thank you, Michelle. Kathleen, I think you're going to talk to us about advocacy and outreach efforts.
Yeah, so I think at International ACAC, with our leadership team and our board, have tried to educate people about what's happening and the impact on our members, whether they're university, school counselors, organizations, and obviously the communities that we serve, of how this is impacting us at this point. So on January 28th, we sent out an email to all of our members, and I think to date, about 80% have opened that. So that's through member clicks, and we find that's a great way to communicate. It was just a member message of acknowledgement and to all of our members that we're aware of the situation. At the same time, NACAC leadership had reached out to us to ask if they could also send something to their membership through their listserv, and they also contacted the Common App, the testing services, and so in a collaboration, they sent a message to their membership, which was a similar message just about understanding of deadlines, access to documents, again, about the communities that we serve. As we are now, we're pretty active on Facebook, on the International ACAC Facebook page. And those of us who have been in the Asia region and definitely within China, we have a WeChat platform that International ACAC members are allowed to be part of. And that's with any Facebook and WeChat groups. It's really nitty gritty information sharing to each other about messages that we're hearing or ways that we can support each other in all ways, both curriculum, university visits, are you hearing from, tests being canceled, that sort of thing. And then tonight or today or this morning, this town hall was thought about last week. And NACAC also asked if they could open up to their members as well. As we know, this is a global issue right now. Our students are all over the place that are being impacted by this, both personally, educationally. And so we're hoping that through these efforts, that we're hoping to inform more people. There's a link at the bottom of the page, which we outline all the things that we're trying to do for advocacy and outreach. We do understand that there's issues everywhere in every part of the country, and this is just one. But we certainly appreciate all the messages that have been sent to us as counselors. We shared those with our students. I've been really impressed with the outreach from universities to assist us in this area. And I think Ning and Michelle could probably agree. We definitely feel heard and understood. It's just that nobody knows what's happening at this point. So we will continue to advocate as an organization for our members.
Great, thank you, Kathleen. And now what you're seeing on your screen is a word cloud about the impact on International ACAC members and actually NACAC members as well. So you may remember that when you registered for this webinar, as part of your registration, you were asked a question. In case you're not familiar with a word cloud, what was done here is that all of the responses were put into a program, and this is the word cloud that was generated. So the larger the word, the more often that word shows up in responses. Now, not surprisingly, you can see the biggest word here is student, right? Students are of course always the main focus, certainly comforting to hear, to see, but also a reminder that we always have to keep students at the center, of our considerations and of our practices and policies and solutions moving forward. But some of the other things that you can see in there, right? Cancel is certainly a big one. Now canceled school, canceled tests, canceled flights, canceled events, canceled trips. I mean, canceled everything, right? So cancellations are certainly a huge concern, as is school. Whether schools their plan to reconvene in person, whether it's online education, things are certainly up in the air, and we'll talk more about that as we get into some more of the content. But again, with this word cloud, we just want you to see that, number one, you're not alone, right? That you are being heard, that those responses that you submitted, we put them all together in this way so that you could see that this is definitely a shared concern. So now we're going to hear from each one of our panelists and guests individually, just to talk a little bit more specifically about the impacts that they are feeling directly. So we're going to go ahead and start with the impacts on secondary schools. And we're going to hear from Ning, Michelle, and Kathleen just for a couple minutes each about the impacts that they're experiencing. So Ning, I believe you're going to go ahead and start us off.
Thank you, Eric. I want to share some information about the impacts on the secondary schools in China. So far, almost 2 million students are working online for academic teaching and learning in different ways. Some courses are run by the government and some are run by the internal school. For our school, we do online course, even though almost 50% of our foreign staff cannot return to China. They're still in states or other country. They try to adjust the time difference and make the online course working. I think students quite enjoy the new teaching technology. They feel quite well for all the teaching and the learning. So far, we don't know when we can physically return to school, even though there is a saying that maybe in the middle or early of March, but we are still waiting for the notice from the government. Before that, we are going to continue the online learning. And the other impact, I think the big one we're talking about cancellation is the cancellation for TOEFL and SAT in China, for Chinese students in any countries. So students are concerning about the test in May or June or further on, and also whether College Board can make up some tests for Chinese students. This is a question raised by students and parents. And also there's a little concern for the AP test in May as well. Another big issue is about the visa. For the graduates, they're going to apply the visa for their fall enrollment. And I heard today that US Embassy will open the visa application again in middle of May. Hope it can happen as scheduled. Another impact, of course, is the visits. Almost the universities canceled the visits, and also we canceled some college fair we planned to hold in China. But meanwhile, we move on to the webinar online version. So far in my school, some universities in Japan, Hong Kong, and Australia have contacted us and is going to arrange some webinar for both students and the counselors. I think that will run well as an alternative for the interaction between students and mission officers. Well, I think another big concern is about the graduating class transcript. Unlike for the IB program, which is more uniform globally, for international program like us, we have our own curriculum, but right now we transfer that into online version. So we try to keep the same quality as the physical education in face, but however, we have a little concern that how the university will receive and evaluate the students' final transcripts and whether this will impact their enrollment or not. And also as most yield events were canceled in China, and how the university will host the students for the orientation, whether there will be a more serious medical check for Chinese students. Those are concerns from students and the parents. Well, that's from my perspective. And I hope that Michelle and Catherine can share more for their students' population.
Thanks, Ning. So I won't repeat what you said. I'll just add on to it. The impact of students learning is probably the first thing we do think about. And that is one thing that's very true. Our students, I'm glad to hear your students are doing really well. However, I think our students, the students in international school, they're struggling with a change of learning environment. We are in IB school, so collaboration and project-based learning is very important, and it's a bit difficult to do this solely online. I think also to keep in mind the students' well-being, their lifestyle has changed quite significantly. Even just in China, they're not able to leave their house. They're self-quarantined. We have about 40% of our students who've decided to stay in China, and 60% has left. So those who are staying here are living in a different world, so to speak. We are also comprehensive counselors, so we're not only supporting our students social emotionally, but also our teachers, and we're looking out for our staffs as well, and making sure that their well-being is being handled and taken care of. We're seeing so we're implementing a mentorship program. So our teachers are reaching out to students every day, and we're seeing students struggling with the lack of motivation. Just getting out of bed and getting a schedule sorted, and just being if they're in the same house every day, it's quite tiring on them, and they're getting highly anxious about what's happening or what's not happening. And also it's caused by the lack of social interactions that with their friends, classmates, and teachers that they would have normally day to day. We are using online platform. We've done online learning since day one, since February 3rd. We've been using Zoom as well. It's just not the same though, in terms of seeing their classmates and having that face-to-face interaction. And just keeping in mind that our students and family are all in very different situations. So it's not just the one blanket generic situation that they're in. For example, an embassy family had to evacuate, is mandated, and they're not sure when they can return, and only the embassies can let them know. So that knowledge of that is not in their hands to decide is also adding on to that anxiety level. And I was talking to Kathleen earlier, we know this is first world problems. We know this is even complaining about their parents, being with their parents 24/7. We get it. It's, the tension at home is quite high. It is first world problem, but it is at the moment our reality. And I think the main issue with this is that we don't know when it's going to end. So we're living in a state of unknown all the time, and that is compounding in the grand scheme of things. So I'll bring it to Kathleen to add on to that.
Thanks, Michelle and Ning. I think we're all seeing many of the same things. I think initially we were all on holiday. It's Chinese New Year or Lunar New Year. So this kind of happened when we were all dispersed. So it's also why a lot of kids stayed. A lot of them were in study mode, maybe for exams that they had to take. So it's not quite like we were together and then dispersed. And so a lot of this is, we've had to kind of scrap things together all of a sudden, right? You're on holiday and you're told, well, guess what? Before holiday's over, you better get your work online. So I think it's been professionally difficult for the teachers, as some of the things that Michelle mentioned. We're pretty independent creatures. We're not used to depending on other people, and all of a sudden we have to start asking favors. Will you take us in? Families, teachers having to be in small quarters with other people. There's that, and that's the teachers, and then put this online program together. And I think for students, I think the hardest thing is this has been in stages. So initially, we thought it was going to be 2 weeks. We thought, oh, okay, so it'll be 2 weeks, and so you kind of think, oh, short term, we'll get something together. And then it got extended. We kind of hear these different rumors. Oh, it's going to go till the third week in February, now all of February. So that kind of came in another stage. So you try to gear yourself up for that, both academically and just personally. And now we're hearing, it's going to be into March. And this all comes with different quarantine situations. And so I think Michelle has talked a little bit about the emotional impact, and I made a Facebook post. I think that's been the most difficult thing. I was here in that first week when the world started closing itself off from the country. And I think every day I thought, oh, do I leave? Do I go? Do I leave? What if I can't get out? And it's sort of a low-level anxiety that our kids are experiencing, and teachers and people in China right now. This low level of, who has the virus? You have the virus. This having to wear a mask at all times is compulsory. Some people are quarantined, can't leave their apartment. So I think all of that is compiled on top of each other. And my biggest concern was just a little more of the long-term impact of this. In some ways, I've thought about for my school that we have to do some trauma training when we come back. It's not almost like, okay, March 2nd, 8 o'clock, let's go into class. There's been an experience that has happened. It's not just a school closure, it's a country closure, and sort of a difficult response from the rest of the world to China, the region, Chinese people. And that's been personally difficult for me. I've had a long range of emotions professionally and personally about how this is impacted. And I can't imagine that my students haven't felt the same way. So academically, we're getting on as best as we can. We're going to ramp it up with more face-to-face contact. As Michelle mentioned, the lack of human contact is big. We started face-to-face counseling, university counseling online, and that's been great. It's almost, I was sort of emotional when I first saw the students because, we're all over the place. And so it's just trying to support our kids, deal with their anxieties, dealing with their parents' anxieties, dealing with the impact of their parents' anxieties on the kids' anxieties. It's sort of triple threat there. And we're doing the best we can. But as I said, I do appreciate all the understanding currently from the university side. We've had some just recent test cancellations. That's been a big blow to us in the region. And we're just hoping that come this year and even next year that people are understanding about the lack of access right now for our students. We're all from bilingual international locations, and what's not heard here is the local students, who are from China, Vietnam, Hong Kong. This isn't just China, but I think that needs to be acknowledged as well. I only know from the international school world, our kids are pretty privileged. They got teachers who care about them, and I'm sure in China they do too, but I think that's also a population that maybe isn't hearing as much information, or things aren't trickling down to them, just wondering who's hearing us, who's caring about us right now.
Great, thank you, Kathleen. Thank you all three of you for sharing those secondary school impacts. We're going to go ahead and turn it over to the universities to give the impact from their side. Right now, we are about halfway through our time. So just a reminder to the attendees, some questions are already pouring in. Please go ahead and feel free to start entering any questions that have popped up as our secondary school representatives were speaking, and keep those questions coming as our university folks present. So we're going to hear from Charlie, and then Jake, and then finally from Jennifer, just 2 to 3 minutes each about the impacts from their side at the university desk. Okay, Charlie?
Yeah, so so the impacts for us, so the first thing that kind of happened to us was that we were planning to do a graduation in China in March. So we've had to cancel that, which is obviously really unfortunate. It's a great event. It's something that we all enjoy attending, and for people to kind of celebrate their achievements with their family over in China. So that's cancelled, and we're currently looking at how we might reschedule that. We of course had to cancel a lot of our recruitment activity. So our conversion or yield events, which would happen around that graduation ceremony, have been cancelled. And again, we're looking at what we can do to support students and to understand what it'd be like to join us. We've also had in the sort of the wider region, so we've cancelled all our activity in Hong Kong and also over in Singapore. For the rest of the region, we're currently expecting to be able to travel to those, but obviously monitoring things closely. In terms of the admission side, which I know because there's a number of you over in China, that you'll be worried about students maybe not getting quite the grades that they were hoping for because of the disruption. So our current policy is that we're kind of going to give students a blanket extenuating circumstances. So normally you kind of contact us and let us know about the difficulties that your students have had. You don't need to do that this year for students that are impacted by the school closures. So we will be aware that any student that's coming to us from affected countries will have been impacted by this, and we'll look to offer some flexibility when we come to confirm results whenever they get them. So whether that's around the IB results in July or A-level results in August. So do be assured that you know, we are aware that students are suffering. We're also very worried about our pre-sessional courses. That tends to be, most of our pre-sessional students tend to be postgraduate students, but those courses are starting and the deadlines are quite imminent. So we're kind of looking at those, extending deadlines where we can. And we're also looking at what steps we could put in place to enable students to join those courses. But of course, there are quite strict visa regulations around those. So we need to be kind of cognizant of those as well. And then we're also looking at things like, so we're currently looking at Duolingo, for example, which might be a way for those students that've got English language requirements to meet them, because we know that there's poor test availability at the moment, i.e. none, and that there's likely to be a bit of a bottleneck when test centres do get reopened, which is hopefully not too far away. So those are kind of the core things that we're thinking about here. I'll hand over to Jake.
Thank you, Charlie. Yes, we are very similar to Bristol, and in terms of policy, there is very little information around this at the moment. So first thing that's sort of being affected at Imperial College London is our interviews in East Asia. So we do conduct in-country interviews in mainland China, Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, all these different parts of the region. First of all of those have been cancelled. So we are now conducting Skype interviews and kind of, you know, arranging everything at very short notice. And second thing is obviously the recruitment activities we have planned a year ago. So we were planning on visiting Hong Kong, Singapore as a group of London institutions to speak to prospective students. We had 7,000 registrations from the prospective students and the parents, and this has been called off as well. So in terms of missions, mainly this is affecting our offer holders at Imperial. We do receive large volume applications from mainland China as well as Hong Kong, and we have received hundreds of letters from different schools and talking about how the coronavirus outbreak is affecting their schools. So the college is fully aware of the difficulties students are facing in the region. So we are very similarly to Bristol, monitoring the developing situation and assessing the sort of implications for affected students. So we haven't spoken about extending the deadlines for offer conditions or submitting English language courses, or we haven't discussed anything about using Duolingo or anything like this at all. But we are monitoring the situation because this is kind of changing daily. So we will be in touch with schools and students if we need any more specific details in connection to the students. But we are fully aware of the situation, and we've been discussing the issue at the health and safety group meeting this week. So this is, you know, we can make sure people get any help they need due to the, you know, rapidly changing travel situations as well. But at the moment at Imperial, we don't have lots of updates to pass along at the moment. But yeah, next I'm going to pass on to Michelle.
Or Jennifer, actually, yeah.
Oh, Jenny.
Yeah, so it's Jennifer from McGill University in Montreal, Canada. And again, I think for the three parts we can talk about in terms of recruitment, admissions, and then the sort of the future. Definitely on the recruitment side, similar to my colleagues, we've experienced a lot of cancellations, obviously, and changes to our travel schedule in the spring. So again, we were planning to go to mainland China, Vietnam, Singapore, and some other areas. So that has all been put on hold physically. Obviously, virtually, we're trying our best to be there as well. Being as well that I was I'm the chair of the Asia Committee for the Council of International Schools, we had planned a tour to mainland China to 9 cities. And that was pretty much all developed when the news came out that we had to cancel. So we're definitely working as well with colleagues in institutions in about 13 countries now that were all part of that tour, and that were really, of course, interested in engaging with students and connecting with counselors and students in China. So on that side, what we're trying to do is still collaborate as a group and offer some joint webinars when we can, and also collecting information from all of the schools themselves and creating sort of a one-stop package that we can distribute to students in schools, just to, again, try to be as accessible as possible and continue that outreach, because definitely on both sides, we know how hard it is not to be able to speak with families and counselors in person. So for sure, the springtime, we're looking at more virtual presence. I'm trying to connect with our alumni that are willing to host events in China, hopefully by sort of mid-April onwards, if we can get the go-ahead that we can host some public events. And I will kind of be there virtually as well. So trying to work with who we have in the country and in the different countries that we're dealing with. And again, trying to see if we can connect as much as possible. On the admission side, we haven't seen a huge drop in terms of applications. It's higher this year with our January 15th deadline. And we've always asked students to upload unofficial documents to their files anyway. So for us, we're seeing students, again, completing their files because they do have a lot of access to unofficial transcripts and student copies. So we're going to be using those for admission. We've also moved to Duolingo as well for English proficiency requirements. And of course, like my colleagues, are trying to be as lenient as possible when it comes to what we need and when. So in terms of when some of their deadlines are up, we might extend those. If we see that towards the end of the spring, going into final exams, there might be some issues with writing final AP, IB, French back A-level exams, as well as sort of national curriculum. Again, we'll take that all into consideration. We anticipate probably that some of those final marks might drop in comparison to their predicted grades. And again, we're going to take that into consideration because we know that they're doing a different type of learning right now. So that will all kind of unfold, I think, in the summer and into the fall. And last but not least, I think we just want to make sure, I think on our side in Canada, anyway, concerns will be about visas and processing and making sure our students can come for September.
Great, thank you, Jennifer, and all of our university side folks. So we've left about 20 minutes to address the questions that have come in, and we would invite you to continue to submit your questions through the Q&A panel there in your toolbar. A lot of the questions that have coming in, and a lot of what the speakers have already talked about, uses that if word, right? And that's the big question, right? What if? And so, because no one knows what's going to happen, right? So I think we want to be careful about addressing a lot of the what if questions that are coming in, and really focus a little bit more on maybe what we're doing now and what we can do. So with that, I would ask, and speakers, not everyone needs to respond, but those of you who can or who have something to share, if you could share maybe one best practice or something that you're doing currently that has been really effective. Maybe that's a way to communicate with students, or maybe that's information on your website or communication. But maybe if you could just briefly share one thing that you've already done that has worked well that others might consider.
So I'll go ahead. So we have just continued in terms of meeting with students as we would for course selections for grade 10 and also for university college counseling meeting with grade 11s. We're using Zoom or WeChat, video call or Skype, whatever is the best connectivity at that moment and depending on where they are. So we're doing that and they're about 30 to 40 minutes long. And it works well. I mean, you get that conversation and you get to see them face to face. So it does work. And I usually send a feedback email anyways to the parent and student. So I do that as a recap of what we talked about. We're doing a lot of things digitally as well, but I find Zoom at the moment is free. The basic 40-minute time frame is free. But I think I was looking to purchasing it online just so we can have an unlimited time frame. But we ran our first study in destination coffee mornings, we call them, this morning for a group of parents. And that has worked quite well. Just make sure that you mute them all when they come in and that they stay muted. And so then you can have your presentation and it's recorded and you can send that off. But we're going to be running 2 more study-in sessions. So we're trying to do the same thing that we would do as if we were in the office, the support that we offer for parents and students, just the same, it's just virtual, so that hasn't changed.
Yeah, I want to give a little add-on to Michelle's feedback. We also run the online college counseling courses for the students. We do the group session once a week for 18 minutes. Then we will do a follow-up one-on-one session for 30 to 40 minutes. We created a template for some uniform questions for the students to review before the conversation. And also we keep all the files into the CFO to track the students' progress. And also we create our WeChat account to publish some information for students and parents. And regarding the course selection, we just passed the Agile period and we'll start the course selection for the coming academic year. Our school created a lot of e-forms so we can treat everything online. So far it's quite smoothly and efficient.
Thank you. Any of the university side folks want to share anything that you're doing? Maybe it's messaging to students currently, or messages on your websites. Anything that you've done so far you want to share with the group?
I can just mention that again, some of our accessible information we put on the website related to testing, for example, like Duolingo is on our website. So if students are looking for other options in terms of some of the tests that we require, it's there. And then again, starting end of February, as more of our decisions are coming out for admitted students, we're setting up more recurring webinars to talk with our admitted students and families and connecting with alumni and some of our local students so that even language-wise, we can present in multiple languages.
Great, thank you. Let's just throw a sort of a practical question out there. One attendee is asking, how do you join the WeChat group for Chinese members? So I don't know if anyone on the call is a member of the WeChat group currently, and you can, speak to that briefly.
Yeah, I'd like to share some information on that. Actually, we have a local Chinese member WeChat group for International ACAC membership. So if you're a member, you can contact any of the people you know who are also the member. They can get you in. And also there are some other local WeChat organizations, such as East Midwest, and some others. You can join in to share information. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. This question was directed for the secondary counselors, but I actually want to open up to both sides. And the question is, have any of you noticed any economic impact on the students or the families? So secondary counselors, maybe have any economic considerations been brought to you, or university side folks, have you maybe heard more from students regarding the cost of the education and the economic impacts of COVID-19?
I can answer that a little bit. I think we haven't seen that yet. If I was my head of school, I might be concerned about companies pulling back. you know, or leaving early. So I could see our schools struggling a little bit with enrollment. I don't know if that happened during SARS. I know Michelle was around when SARS happened. I could see that happening. To be honest with you, it can't, the economic situation here in Shanghai has to be impacted. It depends on what the business is. I mean, part of it is that people can't go to work or being told to work from home. It's incredible. And so I think that will remain to be seen. And I guess as a university member, I mean, I was talking to Michelle and I said, thank goodness this region is important to universities' bottom line. And that may be a sort of negative way, but honestly, that's why we matter, you know, in a way, is that they need our students. Our students are great students and they typically pay a lot of money. And I'm really thankful for that, because that's made maybe some of this, our students will be welcome on campus as much as possible. So I also think, I mean, I was in Europe for a bit and I was trying to visit a university in a European city. And because I'd been to China, I was banned from campus, couldn't go on and visit. And I just thought, well, that it's not the university's fault. The poor, you know, admissions person, it wasn't his call. But I have to say, I'm not so sure I could recommend, you know, that country to my students. I'm, you know, old enough, it hurt, but I hurt more because I thought if I was 18 trying to go back to school, and I know some universities have also not been able to allow students in class in other countries, the United States, for example, because they have just been to China. So those types of situations reverberate through the community. And I think about being welcome and that sort of thing. I think we are going to see the economic impact of this for some time, you know, for some time to come. I don't know if our parents talk to the students about, you know, their financial situation necessarily, but it's much more about, I think other factors at this point, and maybe the money isn't talked about. Somebody else asked about, you know, if universities want to meet our kids, and several of us are trying to put together, you know, just I would prefer not to have a middleman situation, but we're just trying to reach out and create either Zoom or GoToMeeting or whatever, and students from throughout China can join the webinar, just have sort of a presentation just like you would if you were on our campus. Twofold: one, to, you know, replicate the visits that aren't going to be able to happen, and secondly, just to have face-to-face contact, I think, for our students would be useful, just to have some human interaction. So those links are going out either pretty much through WeChat or email, and just hoping to have anybody join that wants to, any students that want to hear from the universities, and, you know, they can do those in different time zones to try to meet the needs. Our kids aren't all in Asia, many are, but some are in Europe, some are in the US, some are, you know, different time zones around the world. So trying to make it accessible to kids, and like Michelle said, try to replicate business as usual as much as possible until people are cured and the virus, you know, works its way out.
And just to confirm, because there have been a couple of questions that have popped up, Zoom, there are no usability issues there in China. Zoom works and GoTo works. Good. Okay. Great. Thank you. Okay, so we want to hear from the university side folks as well. I'm just going to read this one really straight from what was submitted. I'm worried most about your fear of admitting the virus to your campus as opposed to looking at their academic record. I'm sure you have to wait and see, but can you talk a little bit, university folks, about how you are, how the COVID-19 situation is coming up in your discussions of student admission?
Yeah, I'm happy to chip in. I mean, it's not something that we would factor in at all, other than on the extenuating circumstances. We would never say, oh, actually, we want less students from China, for example, because we're worried about COVID-19. I mean, yeah, we are, as a UK university, as you'll know, anyone that sends students to the UK, we're obsessed with academics, and you know, we don't practice holistic admissions. We're always looking at academics, and that hasn't changed at all for us.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would echo the same sentiment in terms of review and the actual admissions process. That will not change. Again, we might be a little bit more flexible in terms of when we can get final results, what those final results will look like, and potentially when we evaluate students for advanced standing and credit, again, that might change a little bit. I think in terms of the side of the health issue and being able to come study in Canada, that's a whole other area when it relates to visa processing. And again, will the visa offices be open? Will there be new restrictions related to medicals that students will have to pass? That we don't know. So I guess I wish we had a crystal ball for that. But really on the university side, our process won't change.
Yeah. I just want to quickly add on to that. But I mean, at Imperial, we have pretty much set up a coronavirus page immediately since the outbreak. So we have over 2,000 students from mainland China at Imperial, and we all have very strong connections, collaborations with China. So this hasn't even crossed our minds. So we understand this is a worrying time, but Imperial, we don't tolerate discrimination or harassment at all towards any specific nationality, regardless where they come from, whether that's East Asia or outside the region. The only thing that may be affected, as all of you guys have pointed out, could be the exam results, or perhaps, you know, how they're going to get a visa sorted before the term starts. But we don't factor those into the admissions process at all in terms of how we're going to control the numbers of Chinese or whatever. So we're very mindful, you know, how everyone's action may be perceived, so we don't tolerate any of those at all. So this hasn't happened. We also have a dedicated coronavirus page for all the current students studying at Imperial, including information about their friends and family coming here to visit and how they can look after their own health, and visitors, contractors on campus, and staff members traveling to the region. But yeah, that's the information we've got to share at Imperial.
Excellent. Thank you, all three of you. Kathleen and Michelle, this question may be more in your wheelhouse. Will this year's International ACAC conference be impacted by the COVID-19 virus? And what is your, projection about counselors from China being able to attend?
Well, I'm a counselor from China, and I hope I can attend this summer. Yeah, we have talked about that. I brought it up several times. I think this situation is evolving. I will tell you, we want all members to be able to attend, and certainly we'll do whatever we can to make sure that happens. Part of this isn't International ACAC can't control this situation. This is often above our pay grade as far as the restrictions that are happening. It's not so much wait and see, but we will be looking at this situation, and hopefully come the spring, I am crossing my fingers that come the spring that we're able to have our schools back together and also have our conference run as normal. Certainly it was part of our conversation just this last week in conference planning. So I know that everybody wants this to happen. And as I mentioned, there are issues everywhere. School disruptions happen everywhere. So we're trying to keep it in check. But absolutely. And I think one of the questions was, well, what would we do? Would we be able to offer sessions streaming? Maybe. I tell you, I mean, I do appreciate the worldwide concern and support for this, what's happening right now. And so we would definitely try to create opportunities for sessions to be streamed if possible. Right now, all the PowerPoints are available, that sort of thing, but I know nothing's like being there. And hopefully if something didn't, if we weren't able to, hopefully we bump it up in the fall as soon as things get back to more normal, we can create opportunities to interact once again. So right now we're it's on our mind, but we just need to see how this rolls out the rest of the spring.
Great. Thank you. There's another question just asking for some clarification. Counselor posted, I noticed that the College Board put out a public notice on the website about the March SAT being canceled, but then it says that there was also an email sent to schools that are test centers, and they seem to be conflicting messages. So I don't know if any of the counselors, if you can clarify from your perspective the situation with the March SAT?
I think that probably we need to clarify to which test centers did these emails get sent to, because we're a test center, and so as I understand, all test centers in China are closed test centers, so meaning like we can only test our students. But I'm wondering if they're asking if it's like, for example, in Indonesia or in Hong Kong, Singapore, if they're being inundated with questions. But I know that students who are from China, or they're not even from China, I have a student who's a US passport holder who actually registered for a test for the March test in Houston, Texas, go figure, and was told that he's been canceled because he's coming in from China. So there's, so he's US passport holder, how they figured he's from China, it's maybe he used a school code, I don't know. So I think they're also canceling on College Board side. So I'm not sure in terms of the question, which test centers he's referring to. That can be clarified.
Okay. Thank you. And I don't know that we'll have time to clarify it today, but perhaps this is a conversation that can spill over into social media for some more clarification. So we're getting very, very close to the end of our time together. And I know I said that I didn't want to explore the what ifs. However, there's an overwhelming number of questions coming in on the what if side of things, so it'd be remiss if I didn't ask. But on both sides of the desk, can you address what if the exams are canceled? What if IB exams, what if A-level, what if AP exams are canceled? Have you had any discussions, and what might your actions look like? Or is it simply at this point a to be determined? Don't all jump on that at once.
I could jump in, I guess, because it is a what if. Again, take all of this with a grain of salt, I suppose. And I mean, we had some precedent in Canada several years ago when a school board or ministry was on strike. And so some students did not get, obviously, final transcripts because final exams were not written. And so the ministry itself decided to sort of look back at the students' curriculum and prorate it almost. And so ended up having a final transcript based mostly on sort of a mid-year. So I assume, I guess, with IB, A-level, AP, I mean, it will depend on the curriculum, of course, what they choose to do. But again, we will take all that into consideration. I think, again, on our side, potentially it might be how much advanced standing and credit will be awarded, depending on what that final outcome is. We often accept deferrals as well. So for some students that might not be able to come in September, they would be able to defer into January or the following year. But yes, it's definitely a big what if, but I think we know that it's not in the students' control, it's not in the school's control, and a lot of this we're gonna have to just sort of juggle and see how we can really accommodate the students as much as possible and ensure that they'll be successful at university at the same time.
Great, thank you. Anyone on the secondary side like to discuss that?
Well, we do have some active members
who are part of the testing
organization.
We will encourage the students to focus.
Sorry.
Oh, I think Kathleen, I think you and Ning were both speaking at the same time.
Okay, I'm going to mute myself then.
It looks like Ning, however, may have frozen.
Oh.
Oh, okay. I think we have her back. Ning, go ahead. Nope. Okay, so it looks like Ning may be having some connectivity issues. So Kathleen, why don't you go ahead and speak on that?
I was going to say that we have the testing organizations are all part of our membership. They do look at the Facebook page, they're active. And so I'm, hoping, and they are asking questions. One of the good things is maybe communicate with your testing coordinator, whoever your AP coordinator, A-level, IB, and make sure that you are getting your concerns known about possible testing scenarios, what ifs, delays, cancellations, postponements, things like that. I think they are asking. I know the IB has asked in the region several times, what's happening in the schools, what are the government organizations saying about closure, and I just think we need to be active. I don't know what would happen. As Jennifer said, it's happened before, that tests haven't been able to be taken, and I really do hope that there's understanding and flexibility if that happens in our region. Thankfully we have some pretty great members who are supportive of our students and what's happening right now. So keep making your concerns known is what I would say, both internally in your schools and externally in any way you can.
Excellent, thank you. And I think that is the perfect way to wrap us up, Kathleen. So thank you for that as well. We'd once again like to say a big thank you to all of our panelists and guests who joined us today. We want to thank all of you attendees who tuned in. Again, please remember that this session is being recorded. We will be posting the recording to the International ACAC website. However, it will be open to all. It will be publicly available. So International ACAC members, NACAC members, and non-members alike will all have access to this recording. Please remember that another one of these panels is happening 12 hours from now. Well, actually, I guess 11 hours from now, right, to start. So if you do have more questions, or if you would like to hear even more perspectives on this situation, we would invite you to come back for the next session beginning in 11 hours. And you can go ahead and register for that. Many of the questions that were asked, thank you for submitting your questions for the panelists. Obviously, we could not get to all of them, but please know that we will be retaining those questions and sharing them with International ACAC. So your questions will be heard. If there are questions that need to be addressed at a larger level, you can keep an eye out for maybe some announcements or for some social media posts. If, however, there is something that was not addressed, some kind of burning issue that we didn't discuss, on your screen, you see the email address for admin@internationalacac.org. You can send your questions or concerns to that email address. All right. So with that, I would like to once again thank everyone. I would like to echo Kathleen's sentiments of please continue to work together. Please continue to take care of each other. Please know that all of those affected in China and worldwide are all in our thoughts, and we will together get through this situation. So thank you again, everyone, and have a fantastic day.